All right, all right. Welcome to another edition of our monthly live series. I'm Chris Alexander, Executive Director of the NAACP New York State Conference. Always honored to be here representing the state conference, representing our president, Aljoy Williams, our executive committee, and all of our leadership across the state. We're going to have a tight conversation today. Quite a few topics that we'd like to spend some time on. But, you know, because of the limited time constraints, we'll keep it focused on two topics that are incredibly pressing right now. One, we'll of course talk about New York Fall, which those of you who've been following the work of the state conference, you know that we endorsed earlier this year, and we've been engaged in a campaign effort to make this bill into a law to ensure that we're not having our state resources go to federal immigration enforcement. But two, we'll talk about something that we've been fighting for a while as well, which is the Solutions Not Suspensions bill. Continue to lack attention in the state legislature. We're going to raise that up, and we have quite a few other updates for you all. I want to start with a quick grounding, acknowledging what's going on in the world, the instability, the chaos. And I know that it's difficult sometimes to fight the fights that we fight locally while there's so much turmoil in the world. That's the constant struggle of the leaders that we work with, those who lead community-based activations, education initiatives, who fight for their neighbors, for the students in the communities that they serve, and still have to always keep an eye out for the broader and bigger, more pressing, I guess, concerns. But that doesn't mean that those local fights are not important. And I think that one important way that the NAACP builds power is by strengthening communities to have those fights locally and to be able to ensure that at every level, wherever we see discrimination, we're fighting it. And so just want to acknowledge what's going on in the world. And then, make sure that we understand that we got to take care of ourselves. I got to do a better job myself, but we've got to make sure that this is a marathon, not a sprint. We got to make sure we have the endurance to carry on to fight what we have to fight tomorrow. So quick updates. The state conference has been incredibly busy. I've been running around the state and trying to make sure that the issues, the communities, et cetera, that we're fighting for continue to be placed on the forefront. I want to highlight, of course, the lobby day that we had at the beginning of this month in Albany. We saw dozens of branches come out. We had like 70 plus meetings with legislators from districts all over the state. These conversations are community focused, but they tie in the local issues to those that are being considered and discussed in Albany, right? Ensuring that the local fights don't end there, that the branch activity sees real change come in the form of legislation at the state level. And so I want to shout out all the branches that participated. I want to thank all the members who sat with members of the branches of the NAACP and acknowledge something really, really important. When the NAACP shows up, people listen. And so I want to shout out all of the members of the team who were able to participate and make that lobby day a success. Next, I want to talk about No Kings. We're going to spend some time talking about this a little later, but just acknowledging that, this is a huge moment, a huge organizing opportunity in front of us. This Saturday, March 28th, the No Kings protests will be taking place all across the country. Local branches will be participating locally, and the state conference will be participating with a large contingent in the New York City protests. And so we're looking to see folks out there. We understand that this is a moment of great concern. There's a lot of instability in the world, but this mobilization is about more than showing up for that day. It's making a statement about how we're going to protect our democracy. And there's a lot of ways in which our democracy is under attack. This is a huge mobilization, but more than just pulling people together, some key messaging, some key focal points for us as a state conference. but also we think for the communities that we serve, ensuring that their ability to participate meaningfully in their democracy is not infringed, ensuring that they continue to live and participate in their communities in a way that is not distracted by federal infringement. And so we're excited to be participating. Branches all across the country, as I said, will be engaged there. And so hopefully you'll see us out there. Lastly, we're going to talk a little bit later in our conversation on a recent settlement that the National NAACP, in partnership with LDF, Legal Defense Fund, were able to secure with the Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education, protecting DEI programs. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I think it's important for folks to know before we get into it, just a bit about what the NAACP has been doing to push back in this moment, not just by organizing, not just by going to Albany to raise issues of importance, but also in the courtroom. And so we want to thank our leaders on the national level, as well as LDF, for partnering and for ensuring that schools, school districts, school boards who are protecting and ensuring that students receive culturally competent education, culturally competent programming that's both self-affirming and really prepares our young people for the future, for the rest of their lives, is something that we can continue to have. And so that settlement, we'll talk about a little bit, but a really important step that's taken. Membership. Right. Before we get into it, we always want to talk about membership. We are in a big push right now to recruit and to bring folks along for these conversations. I know that when I'm out there, when I'm banging on tables and doing the press conferences and the rallies and all that stuff, I can get consistent questions of folks wanting to be a part of something in this moment when there's such uncertainty. There's a desire for us to kind of come together and organize. And I want to make sure that you all know that the NAACP is here. We've got branches all across the state. And we're looking for you. We need new leadership. We need folks who care about issues. And I know that sometimes it can be daunting. It's a big organization. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of different issues that we engage in. But what is best about this is that there's a way for you to find your lane. If you care about environmental issues and that's your priority, come on and join the Environmental and Climate Justice Committee. If you are a former teacher or educator or in any way, we've got an education committee, and we'll hear a little bit from our education committee chair later tonight. But this is a place where you can come in and do some really good work to make an impact, both locally on your community, but also on some of those broader fights that we're engaged in. And we're looking for that new energy, and it's definitely welcomed. So tonight we want to talk about budget. Right now, the state legislature, the governor, they're engaged in what's known as budget negotiations. We've talked about this before. We flagged, kind of how this process goes. And if you know me, I'm all in it, trying to make sure that the issues that are important to the communities that we serve are advancing, that we're having proper funding come to our projects and our school districts that need it. But one of the biggest points of this moment is a deep conversation around New York for All, which not exactly in the budget, but kind of in the budget, part of the budget conversation. We're going to talk about it. But you should know the budget is due April 1st, right? We're on March 25th. It doesn't seem like they're there just yet. So there's a lot of issues that I think are still going to be hammered out, and New York for All will continue to be one of them. Where we are in the process specifically, we've had, of course, the presentation of the executive budget. We've seen, as recently as last week, I believe, the State Assembly and State Senate advanced their response to the executive budget through the their one House resolutions. And now we're in the part where we do the nitty-gritty, where we find out exactly what the dollar amounts are going to be going to each agency and each program, and what legislation, significant, big piece of legislation, is going to advance as part of this budget process. And so there's a lot going on in Albany. I know sometimes it may seem a little quiet, but trust me, there's a lot going on. It's a big budget that we have in New York State to work through, and we're looking forward to a work product that reflects the priorities of the state. There's, obviously also a lot going on outside of New York State. I pointed, of course, at the, we're at war. Not to say that, but to the dysfunction, to the destabilizing impact of war, of this level of engagement that we're in right now in the Middle East. But we also still have quite a bit of activity happening in DC. And I want to take a few minutes just to raise up concerns from national NAACP, from our state and local units around the SAVE Act. Now, some of you may have heard about the SAVE Act and have seen in recent weeks and months conversations around the SAVE Act continue to kick up. To be very clear about what we're talking about here, this bill is not going to save much. In fact, it's probably one of the most significant threats to civic participation, to voting rights that we've seen in a long time. And the fact that the administration in DC and the Congress have continued to engage and try to find ways to advance this piece of legislation is incredibly concerning. This is obviously a very unpopular bill in the communities that we serve. But for those who are unfamiliar, I just want to give a couple of quick points about what it is so that you know and are informed about the impact that it could have on your ability to vote and to engage in the civic process. So we've got this bill called the SAVE Act. It is a voter ID law on steroids. We're not talking about a license. We're talking about proof of citizenship. That means a passport. That means a birth certificate, which I know a lot of folks don't have. And by allowing a requirement such as that to be placed on the process, not that folks who are not citizens vote illegally, which is what I know folks would like others to believe, but the fact that a lot of folks who are eligible to vote don't have passports, don't have access to their birth certificates, or in the case of and this is a story that we keep hearing often, in the case of women who've married or others who've changed their names throughout their lives. If you don't have a clear identifier like a birth certificate or updated papers and documents that show that change of name, you might not be able to vote. And so we're incredibly concerned about it. We've continued to push our membership to call their members of Congress, your representative and your senators, to make sure that they're holding the line on this piece of legislation. As of today, the House passed the bill on February 11th, but it has not yet been advanced in the Senate. Right now, it looks like the votes are not there, but the conversation around it advances, and there's immense pressure from the White House to make sure that this bill becomes law. We're going to do all that we can to fight it, but we can't do that without you. And so we're going to make sure that you hit the action alert, call your member of Congress, your senator, your representatives, make sure that they know that this is a piece of legislation that could drastically change how our democracy works, and that we are not interested in the SAVE Act. I want to now, one other note I think that's important related to that, of course, as we get closer to November and, we're getting ready for midterm elections, want to make sure that everybody who's tuned in, if you're tuned in and you're civically engaged, but know some folks that are not, we're going to be doing a huge amount of voter education and registration over the next several months, making sure that we're really leveraging all of our communities to maximize voting power across the state and country. And so this always is a plug to make sure that you get tapped in, that you get registered, and you can go to your local NAACP to get that done. You can go to your local Board of Elections, your local DMV, but it is important now more than ever, always important that folks stay registered and participate in our democracy, because if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. All right, so that's a little housekeeping, a little stuff that's going on. We're going to jump straight into our next conversation with the incredible Christine Waters, who is the State Education Committee Chair for the NAACP New York State Conference. She's been leading from this seat for some time and has continued to be one of the champions that I look to for inspiration. She does not stop. She does not stop because the threats to our young people, to parents trying to ensure that their children have a quality education, it doesn't stop. So, Christine, why don't you come on stage? And I want to talk with you. First, welcome. It is so good to see you. As always, we did this conversation last year around this bill, and I know that there's progress, right, that we continue to see in some ways and still a hold up in other ways. And so we're talking solutions, not suspensions. It's an incredibly important piece of legislation. It reduces and restricts the use of suspension as a tool in our schools for younger students. And really, I think the two biggest parts of the legislation is mandating that even in the case of discipline, that students aren't removed from access to their education. And then two, that we replace discipline with something restorative. So I want to just, let's start with kind of a general framing. What do you think is something that the people absolutely know about solutions, not suspensions, as a vehicle for reform in our public schools?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chris, for having me join this conversation. The current stressful environment for our students, our educators, our administrators, and our school-related personnel has caused unintended consequences. The Dignity for All Students Act was passed in 2012, and I remember the former education chair, Dr. Audrey Gall, actually talking about the zero tolerance policies way back then, back in 2008. So we celebrated when the DASA got passed. It enshrined that their districts had to have codes of conduct. And what's ended up happening is that those codes of conduct have been overused to create suspensions from schools. And but we're now in the 10-year anniversary to establish a protocol that's more consistent for all school districts to eliminate zero tolerance policies, to use suspensions as a last resort, not the first resort. So research shows that suspensions don't work. And often it exacerbates the problem, causing more anxiety, more isolation, falling further behind in their schoolwork and their social skills, as well as causing depression, more anxiety about that. And actually, we here at NAACP, we've been talking a lot about the school to prison pipeline. Well, the children sometimes end up being suspended so often and, having it escalate such that they end up in the juvenile system. So what we're talking about is that the number of children who are being suspended from school is astronomical. We're going to put in the chat a place where you can check what's happening in your district. I know I was shocked when I actually saw it in numbers. The students are being suspended in kindergarten, from kindergarten all the way through to college-age students. What's more, just recently, in the last few weeks, Attorney General James conducted an investigation and announced that in the Buffalo School District, we found that Black and brown students and special ed students are being suspended at a higher rate, and they usually serve harsher, longer suspensions, and often their IEP is not being followed. So Buffalo did take some steps prior to that investigation to ban suspensions below the third grade. And they are now, just like we had our cell phone insistence that we make sure that the children are not being suspended for using their cell phone, they are now finding solutions to banning the below the third grade. Basically, what's been happening is that it's ending up being stolen time, and it contributes to the absenteeism. It has consequences for literacy and continuous disruptions to instruction. So here we are trying to say that our children are having difficulty reading when those very same children are the children that are being pushed out from school, or just plain repeatedly they've used suspensions in order to what they call solve a problem, but it ends up actually exacerbating the problem.
You know,
So
and
we need students and parents and social workers and educators to have intervention strategies and solutions to prevent and resolve the underlying problem.
we've, I appreciate the way that you frame that, because it is very much so a thing that I imagine our audience is familiar with, the school to prison pipeline, and tracking suspension rates, et cetera, along with likelihood that young people end up incarcerated. With all that you just laid out, I mean, for us, obviously the direction is clear. What is the holdup in your mind? What do you think things stand with the legislation? What's the opposition? And just to inform,
Sorry.
you all right. Just to inform our audience here, who don't always tune in, who may hear about the school to prison pipeline and think, well, obviously, if we notice this trend line, why not adjust it? Why not address it? What do you think is the holdup? What's the concern? What's the issue with the legislation advancing?
Well, there, the holdup is that most people don't understand that we need our children back in school. We need support for our teachers, for the alternatives that need to happen. We need to be able to listen to the children and the teachers and the administrators who are now doing all kinds of follow-up paperwork that don't actually make a whole lot of difference in terms of making sure that they don't continually repeat. So what the union, we've spoken with the union about it, and they understand the position that we're taking, and they also are looking to be able to find the solutions. And we need to all get together to talk about it. And what we've done is we've put together a team of people from all over New York State to discuss this, to be able to see what school board policy we can also write for restorative practices to be a part of the protocol for the codes of conduct. So if we can look to see that our children are listened to, that the peers of the people who are being suspended and pushed out from school, if they are that reduce their trauma, engage them in conversation, make sure that you include the voices of the teachers and the administrators in solving this problem, because I do believe that in this legislation, it is very general right now and can be adapted. But we're going to need our school boards on board to be able to write the policy for restorative justice. And we should have each of the people in our community on those committees, the people who are being suspended even, to be able to listen to their voices. And Senator Jackson and the coalition, the Suspensions Not Solutions Coalition, and Michelle Solagis, when we've gone to Albany to lobby, they've brought the students with them. And you can listen to what they're saying to be able to, and the solutions that we can come up with together. But we can't do it alone. We need everyone engaged. And as I said, the Solutions Not Suspensions Coalition, which we are a part of, um, we meet on a weekly basis. You can actually sign up on the website. You can actually interact with your senators. You'll see the ones who are supporting it, and there are quite a few. It's got quite a bit of support, and you can see what the actual data is through the children's agenda to be able to make a difference. And that's basically what we're trying to do. Not just, we can't wait another year. This is 10 years of students going through this, and because they only go through school once, we want to be able to make it the best.
Yeah, and I
So,
appreciate that framing. And I want to. You brought up restorative practices, and I mentioned earlier that part of the requirement is to we find a way to replace. And it just brought me to a quick anecdote. My oldest Ava, who I know is watching. Hi, Ava. When she's trying to correct her younger sister, something I've said to her is find another way, right? Let's find another way, because the how that conversation happens is crucial to the success or the outcome that you hope to see. And in introducing restorative practices, we are giving our educators another way. And I know that there are plenty of teachers and leaders in the education community who are supportive, and some who are concerned about this legislation, because it takes that tool of suspension away when they can't find another, when they can't find another way. But I think that introducing the restorative practices, and ensuring that folks do the hard work of ensuring that when there's a problem identified, or when a kid is acting up, that we have a conversation, we get to the root of the problem. I think that's crucial. I want you just to say a little more about the restorative practices that we're contemplating would be helpful in replacement of suspensions, at least for the young.
well, um, currently teachers are under a great deal of stress, and I can imagine that they are thinking, "Oh no, not one more thing." But they all pretty much have had trainings in restorative practices. However, they've not been given the time in the busy schedule to be able to make sure that it happens. Um, we need to be able to think about the teachers' needs and be able to include them in whatever restorative practices that your particular district come up with. We need to include the administrators and the deans to be able to make sure that they are not inundated with paperwork rather than the actual children who need to be looked after. Um, we need to be able to give each other grace,
Yeah.
and the parents' voices need to be heard and be part of the conversation on what their child needs. The community also has resources that can connect our children or reconnect our children and get to the bottom of it. New York City, for example, the school district has a program called Parent Connections.
Mhm.
And part of being able to have parent connections is passage of another bill for the citywide leadership team. We need to be able to follow the chancellor's recommendations to have the parents participate in leading in their districts. Right now, we are in the season of people running for the school board, and we actually have a workshop that's been meeting every Thursday to be able to know step up to be able to help write the policy. So we need the engagement of everyone. Now is the time. The children can't wait another year before, and the teachers can't wait. Um, they've got a lot on their plate as it is, and the students are feeling the stress, and they're acting out.
Yeah.
We need to be able to know what the children actually need. We need to know what the teachers actually need on the ground, and then make the time, because some of the restorative practices things are actually being able to have the time to reconnect with the students. There are children that right now are afraid to say anything. They're suspending children who are victims of attacks, whether they be because of microaggressions, being called a name. Some children are not even understanding why they're exploding and acting out, but they need help. We need to be able to have our social workers involved. We need to have everyone at the table to fight for our children's future. Not just for the future, but our children's present. And so I'm asking everyone today to just take a look at this bill, and engage with your assembly people, your legislator, your district. Get onto a committee so that you can be part of this citywide leadership team. That legislation is coming up to a vote in New York City. Uh, we don't have school board uh, campaigns for the city until next year. However, the April 20th is the deadline for the rest of New York State. And get people, work with your civic engagement chair to be able to get people registered to vote, and to be able to come out to support the budget and support the candidates that are going to help to write the policy to make a difference for our kids.
Thank you so much, Christine. I want to just conclude with the ask of you. You said so much what people can do to get involved. I know we have a lobby day coming up as well in support of the bill.
Yes, on May 11th, the entire Solutions Not Suspensions Coalition will be having a lobby day. And on that website, there is a sign up for you to be able to participate in that. And all of the information will be there. I know that our state conference will be there. We're going to push for our people, and we're again standing up for our children in the present for their future.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Christine. I mean, there's, so much more I want to dive into with you on the work that the Education Committee is doing, but I wanted to just take some time to highlight the bill, because I know things get lost in these moments, and this whole conversation that we're having tonight is about young people, because that's how we end up, coming to, having so many passionate leaders is fighting for the future, right? And we're 100+ years later, we're still doing that work. So I want to thank you
Absolutely.
both for your work, continued commitment, and for being able to share some knowledge with us tonight. Thanks so much, Christine.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Too. Yeah. So listen, that's just one example of some of the really important that a bill like froze up here a little bit. A bill like Solutions Not Suspensions requires a whole of community lift to change behavior, to improve practices, to improve outcomes. It requires us to have that collaborative discussion. And I think that what's special about that bill, not just the fact that we have such incredible champions, and Mikhail Salages, who's also the caucus chair for the Black Caucus in New York State, and who's been a guest on Ish Live, but also Senator Robert Jackson. But it's also because it's something that touches people. It's a way for people who are feeling impacted by an issue. If you're a parent who's ever, had a child suspended, or a parent or just a person who cares about young people continuing to have access to education, it's a way for us to all get involved in something that we can all care about and unite behind. So we're encouraging you all to go to the Solutions Not Suspensions website to learn more about the legislation, and of course to join us in the fight to make sure that the future of our young people is bright. I want to transition now and continuing with the theme of tonight with our educators. I want to bring on Billy Moss, who is the president of the Islip Smithtown branch. Billy is one of those types of advocates that we have here at the NAACP that just does not stop. And I want to shout him out for his continued fight for equity, especially in the hiring of our educators. We have an incredibly important piece of legislation that we're supporting there, even though we're talking about something else. I definitely want Billy to come on and highlight it a little bit coming out of that conversation. Billy, welcome, welcome, welcome. We can't see you. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I cannot see you. But that's all right. We're gonna jump straight in. There we go. There you
All
go.
right.
All right. It's good to see you, man.
It's good to see you too.
How's everything going?
Pretty good.
Really, pretty
Glad
good.
to be here.
That's good to hear. So, I mean, obviously, you heard Christine.
Mhm.
You're also an educator, school administrator. You've been in the fight for education, trying to get solutions on suspensions passed for some time, but also pushing a variety of education proposals to ensure that our kids have the absolute best. Anything you want to add from that conversation that we just concluded?
Sure. I definitely, I'm 100% in favor of everything that you guys talked about. We should be taking care of our students and not, getting them ready for incarceration. So certainly punitive measures should be the last measures that we utilize to educate our students. When people make mistakes, they should be brought along to doing the right thing and not just kind of discarded and punished without explanation and without, education. So we're in the business of education, and that's what we should be doing first and foremost. And certainly solutions, not suspensions, it's all about that. So 100% in favor of that and glad to be supportive.
Appreciate you. So, Billy, I wanted you to be on here because your branch is the one that submitted the resolution that led to the state conference and the state conference's endorsement of New York for All. Can you speak to what folks were experiencing? You all are on Long Island. What you all are witnessing that led them to speak up on this issue?
Sure. Well, I certainly helped to introduce that at the branch level because of my personal experience. I happen to live literally down the street from the largest, I would say Hispanic as well as immigrant population in a New York public school. Brentwood High School has well over 1,500 English language learners, which is a very high number in terms of density for any school in New York State. And seeing ICE cars parked on my street as students walk to school and walk home was very disconcerting to me. And there were sightings, of course, around Brentwood High School on other streets as well. And as an educator, I certainly am familiar with the Supreme Court's decision that bus stops as well as entree into schools and school exits are part of the school grounds, according to them, and certainly should be respected by the federal government that way. I certainly believe that students have a right to attend school without fear or intimidation about going to school. Certainly, we don't want to put students in a position where they're afraid to go to school or lessening their attendance at school. That's a major factor. That would harm the taxpayers' interest and investment in their education. So certainly anything that's going to stop students from going to school and taking full advantage of what the taxpayers are paying for, we should be against as a society. And certainly taxpayers shouldn't want their money wasted by the federal government or any institution or anyone imposing fear and intimidation on public school students, because it ends up turning into a total waste of money.
And I didn't even give the synopsis on the bill, but you definitely framed it up. The New York for All Act is a piece of legislation that would restrict the use of state and local dollars for or in support of federal immigration enforcement and prohibit the formal form of coordination that usually takes the shape of agreements called 287G agreements, but also deals with informal coordination, as in, what you all have experienced, and many communities have experienced. You all kind of have this unique position on the island. I think we've seen, obviously the Nassau County executive has pushed for these agreements, has signed and entered into this agreement himself, but he's also deputized local law enforcement and former law enforcement to support this effort. It's obviously unsettling.
Right.
But one thing that continues to drive me insane on this issue is that we're missing the point that if it is the case that local law enforcement is focused on being a conduit or support stream for federal immigration enforcement, why would anybody call, especially someone who is either undocumented or is a non-citizen, why would they rely on law enforcement, as a public safety tool if this is the case, that we know that flag is going to create, a stream or a trail that leads to somebody getting disappeared? What do you all, and from the branch perspective, I want to focus on that because that's really what brought us here. From the branch perspective, the impact that you're seeing from them placed outside the schools, the raids outside and around schools, and even kids and parents being taken. What has been the impact for you all and your branch?
Sure. There's a huge economic impact. Fear is debilitating. And one of the issues that is happening in our communities across Long Island, especially communities of color, is that people are not engaged in community activities the way that they were before, for fear of running into the very elements that you're talking about. And that creates a complete depression of money moving in our communities. So what has happened is that because the immigrants who are present are not coming out of the house, they're not going to restaurants, they're not going to parties, they're not going to entertainment like the movies or bars or any all those kind of entertainment establishments, our businesses and our communities of color are facing economic hardship over this. And that is a major issue. Some people would call it indirect. I still call it direct, because of the fact that people are being, scared into their homes and out of our business establishments. And so they're not spending money on the things that keep everybody's blood moving economically. And so we have American citizens who own businesses in communities of color who are now suffering because their clientele has decreased dramatically.
Yeah. And I know, when you put it into the economic dialogue or economic terms, it always connects a little better for those in those positions of power. But also, like, from a human perspective, I've seen, and I know we've had conversations and with some of our other leaders across the state, that is also folks not taking advantage of not just businesses and from an entertainment perspective, but also not going to services, not calling for ambulatory support when people who are not filing complaints when they've been abused or unable to fight for themselves. There's an impact and a ripple effect here for our non-citizen or undocumented, which I push back on all these terms, but just as the vernacular that we use, there's a significant impact on all of it, right? And I think that one thing that continues to come up for us as we've been engaged in a conversation around this is, what does the NAACP have? What stake do we have in this fight? And I want to hear what you have to say, but I've got a lot of thoughts about that conversation. I'm obviously I'm a first generation American, but
anything that impacts our communities, right, economically, is number one. And this, whether people want to believe it or not, if you talk to the local business person in communities of color right now who rely on walk-in clients, they're suffering.
Yeah.
Okay. Whether it's a gas station, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a nail salon, whatever it is where those people are dependent on traffic, they're suffering economically. So in our communities of color, our local business owners, who many of whom are of color, are having more harder time than other communities, right? Because it's our clientele that's being affected by this, and that's a hard reality. So I reiterate that that's in my opinion that's number one, because that's across the board. But then there are the secondary issues, like when you talk about crime. I definitely, as an administrator, have seen it where young people, even under my care, are very reluctant to disclose when they are a victim now, for fear of what can happen afterwards. And so, when we are depressing the immigrant culture, our immigrant neighbors from reporting crimes, then guess what? When they don't report it, it stays, that criminal stays out there to do it to somebody else. And then somebody else might be you. So there's an indirect, certainly, effect on everybody who's American, right? Potentially, for someone who could have gotten locked up because they victimized an illegal immigrant or undocumented or whatever we want to call the person, who didn't report it because of all this fear going on. They didn't go to the police because they're deathly afraid of going to the police so that they don't get deported. Well, now that person, could have reported it, and the criminal is out there to do it again. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of impact. That is the kind of impact that we're seeing in our communities.
Yeah, and I think I know the priority from the administration at the start of it was we're going to go after the most undesirable, and I push back strongly on all of that. But I think what we've seen in the way immigration enforcement has played out is something incredibly concerning. And I would say what makes it an issue for us to lead on is that it is the literal same playbook that we've had to deal with for many years: pretextual stops, racial profiling,
right,
unlawful checkpoints, freedom of movement, violations of due process. Right, we continue to see this type of activity.
Erosions of civil rights.
Yeah, and so I for Black New Yorkers, for New Yorkers who feel disconnected from this moment and this fight, we continue to reiterate, this is all of us, right? This is what we've been fighting for 100 years. These are the fights. And so I really wanted to kind of get that perspective from you, because I think that it's a very different situation, I think, on Long Island, because there's a lot more coordination happening, and I'm here in New York City right now. I want to ask you a follow-up question. As we're running tight on time, but what do you think is a way that we can build coalition across communities that don't always see their struggles as connected, right? So if somebody's not registering the economic impact because they're not a business owner, or they don't work with communities that have a large immigrant population or whatever, what are the ways that we can build some of these bridges to make people understand it's going to impact all of us?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, this could be your son's girlfriend. This could be your daughter's future husband. I mean, all of this goes on and on. Like this, it doesn't have there's no clean slice away from humanity, such that this is never going to affect you. So just thinking that it's never going to affect you, you're probably the one that gets the surprise. The guest who's coming to dinner surprise, as we always talk about, right? So they're like, there's no way that you can predict whether or not this is one day going to be your issue. And so certainly, as we have always said in the work of civil rights, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. Okay, so if it's in somebody else's house today, it can be in your house tomorrow, and we better all be waking up to the harsh reality that civil rights are being eroded across the board, right under our noses. And if we allow it for some, we're allowing it for all, including us.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna end on that note. I want to thank you, Bill. Thank you so much. I know you're out in an event, doing the work. So thanks for hopping on with us for a little bit, and thanks for advancing that resolution, because at the end of the day, these are the types of issues that need our voice most. I think there's a bridge that we can build that's sometimes a little more difficult for others, and that's really important. We're able to step in this way. So I want to thank you for your leadership and for your partnership always.
No problem. Anytime.
Thank you. You know, we listen, perspective, right? Perspective. I mean, the economic argument is one that I think is important. It works for everything else. When we are concerned about fraud or waste or abuse, or or don't want to take a step on environmental justice concerns, right? There's always the step that we can raise that there's an economic impact that's unsustainable. The last I checked, thanks to the big beautiful bill, ICE's budget is about $75 billion right now. And so if we're keeping an economic message here, then obviously there's an impact to businesses that Billy was highlighting, but we also of course have the fact that our limited constrained resources on the state and federal level being directed so much to activity that violates regularly the rights of our citizens, non-citizens, people in this country. It's not something that we're interested in supporting. And so we're continuing to make that push, to make that claim that this is impacting all of us, and that we're not interested in state dollars, local dollars going to support this effort, and we're not interested in supporting this type of activity. So if I want to make a quick pitch to call your legislators in Albany, this is the debate of the moment. This is the thing that is taking up a lot of oxygen in Albany. And so it is crucial now. This is the moment. This is my role, is to tell you all when to go. And now is the time to go. This bill needs your support, and your elected leader needs to know that we are not interested in funding this type of activity. All right, we are just about at the end. I want to thank our guest, Christine Waters, who once again is our State Education Committee Chair. She leads all of our education work. That is both our direct advocacy around bills like solutions, not suspensions, but also has been a thought leader of imagining what education can look like when we give both parents and teachers the tools to support our students. And of course, Bill Moss, who brings in a perspective that I think doesn't get highlighted enough as the impact of this type of activity, this immigration enforcement on our local businesses, which is of course of concern. We're also incredibly concerned about the violence and the continued violation of rights that these agents have engaged in. So we're asking for your support of both those pieces of legislation. And what's beautiful about this moment that we're in is that both of these bills came from a local concern, or our support rather of these bills came from a local concern, from seeing the racial disparities and who's getting suspended, kids being kicked out of schools and denied access to their education, and of course, families getting torn apart and separated. These observations happen at the local level, and then we bring them up to action. And so if there's a local issue that you're concerned about, I guarantee there's probably a state solution that we can put in place here to make sure that your community is better off, that your family is safer, healthier, and able to have that brighter future that Christine kept talking about. Before we close, I want to make sure that we're doing a big push again for you to become a part of the solution, to become a member of your local branch. We got 54 branches kicking. I think it's 55 now because Ithaca just got chartered. So if you're in Ithaca, there's an NAACP branch there now. And we'd love to have you join our ranks as we continue to push for a fairer and more just New York. My name is Chris Alexander. Thank you all for joining. We appreciate the time and, of course, your continued commitment to justice. Have a good night, y'all.